going on, Media Maniacs? It's your boy Media Fiend, and we are back. And we are back doing something a little different. So lately, I've been having requests for a new online live series called Media Fiend Reads, and I'm down to do it. And I'm super pumped because I've had a lot of requests for the Supernatural series of books, and I have them all, and I am willing to do a live read series with you guys. So I'm definitely down, and today's first Media Fiend Reads is we're going to be diving into Supernatural, Witch's Canyon. Now, these books were like one-off books written as the show was taking place. A lot of people explain them more like deleted episodes. Your boy Media Fiend is a super Supernatural fan. Like, I love Supernatural. I watch it all the time. Dean is by far my favorite character ever created. Jensen Ackles is like one of my favorite actors of all time. His portrayal of Dean is just fantastic. And I was like, you know what? Being a Supernatural fanatic that I am, I saw this book series and I jumped on it. Like, I mean, I got them a lot separately. There was a lot. And I did end up getting the book, the whole series. So I figured, why not read it with you guys, and we'll go through the whole book series. They take place during different times of the series, of the show. So I got the chronological order of how to read them. Unfortunately, the one book I'm missing at the moment, the number one book, but I don't think they tie in. So I'm going to read the second book in the chronological order of reading it. And then once I'm able to get my hands back on the first book, we'll read that one after we're done with this one. So it gives me a little bit of time. But yeah, so the first book in the series we're going to read is Supernatural Witch's Canyon. And I made sure that old Sam and Dean are watching your boy's back as he does this. So I have him sitting here guarding me, watching my six. So I sit right there, watching my six as we do this. And yeah, I got the nice little ambient fire so you guys can relax, enjoy the read, and just, if you have to, close your eyes and just lose yourself in the book, which I'm going to try to do myself. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead. We're going to read the back. We're going to see what the plot of this story is, and we're going to go from there. And then we're just going to dive right into it. Okay. It says, 2 years ago, Sam and Dean Winchester lost their mother to a mysterious and demonic supernatural force. 22 years ago. In the years after, their father John taught them about the paranormal evil that lives in the dark corners and on the back roads of America. And he taught them how to kill it. Sam and Dean have set out on the road trip to the Grand Canyon, but this is no vacation for the brothers. On a stretch of deserted ranch land just beyond the canyon's stunning vistas, mysterious murder spree have occurred every 40 years. The area's inhabitants have been few and far between in years past, but a nearby mega mall is about to celebrate its grand opening and attract thousands of fresh victims. The Winchester boys are determined to protect locals and shoppers alike, but they never anticipated they'd be fighting a group of killers this vicious, this vindictive, this dead. A deadly horde of animal spirits and human ghosts has arisen to terrorize this tiny corner of the Arizona desert. If Sam and Dean can't figure out why, the wide open space of the West will once again become a desolate frontier, and the Witch's Canyon will be the brothers' final resting spot. That sounds awesome. Man, that sounds cool. It says, you've seen the hit series, now hit the road with Sam and Dean Winchester. Okay, so, and then there's just selling that's the one, I think that's the first one, Nevermore. I don't know where I put that, but we have to find it. It says, alright, now here we go. Now we're going to dive into it. I hope you guys are ready. Hang on to your butts. I hope you guys got a cold drink and a snack because we're going to get into it. It says, daytime was for investigation, nighttime for battle. The wail of a siren jerked Dean out of his deep sleep. Cedar Wells had been so quiet. They might have been camping 100 miles away from the nearest other human. Instead of sleeping in a motel at the edge of the town, in contrast, the blaring siren was almost deafening. "That's not good," Sam said. He slipped out of his bed and started dressing. "A siren is pretty much always bad news for someone," Dean agreed. By the time they made it to the Impala, a gift from Dad, 1967 Midnight Black, newly rebuilt, the siren had faded into the distance. But they knew its direction of travel through town and toward the Grand Canyon. Another couple of minutes later, they could see flashing roof lights flickering through the trees up ahead. Dean and Sam got out of the Impala and hurried to a driveway that led to a big white barn. A pickup truck was parked in the driveway, and beside it was the body of what must have been a man, probably not too long ago. The truck driver's side door hung open. Blood had splattered up the side of the truck and onto the driver's seat, and the man's arm was hooked up over the step, but his throat was gone, along with the bottom half of his face, and something had opened his chest cavity. It seemed like whatever had done that had been hunting for tender morsels, but Dean didn't spend a lot of time counting organs. He glanced long enough to estimate the damage, then looked away, sickened by the sight. You could see a lot of carnage without ever going to like it. Wow, that was just an opening. That was just wasn't even a chapter yet. It says Supernatural, Witches Canyon, by Jeff Merowit, based on the hit CW series Supernatural, created by Eric Kripke. It says, this novel is dedicated to Major John Wesley Powell, Clarence Dutton, Ed, Abby, a whole bunch of people. Not going to be reading personal names and stuff. Acknowledgements. We're just going to skip past that. We're just going to go right into the prologue. Cedar Wells, Arizona, December 5th, 1966. From various houses along the block, Mike Tyler could hear the opening theme to the Monkees TV show. Its insistent notes made him hurry his step. He'd been at the Cedar Wells Library doing research for an 8th grade history report, and consumed by the books, he lost track of time. Now he had to rush home, and he'd still miss at least half of the program. It wasn't his favorite show. That particular honor fell to Batman, but it was his favorite show on Monday nights. His mom complained that he watched too much TV these days, but he didn't understand what that even meant. How could someone watch too much TV when great shows like Star Trek, Green Acres, Lost in Space, Combat, and the Rat Patrol were on every night? Not to mention the cool spy shows like Get Smart and Mission Impossible and the FBI. What bothered him was when his favorites were stacked up against each other like The Green Hornet and The Time Tunnel on ABC Friday nights, while Tarzan and The Man from U.N.C.L.E. were on the same time on NBC. He tried to flip back and forth sometimes, but his mom complained that he'd wear out the dial on their big Zenith. If he could figure out a way to watch one channel and then another, maybe Mom would have a legitimate complaint. The Monkees was definitely catching on with Mike and his buddies at school. They could tell him at school tomorrow what the story was about, but he didn't want to miss the songs. When it ended, he'd leave the set on NBC for I Dream of Jeannie, then switch over to the Rat Patrol for a little army action before getting ready for bed. He would have been home already if he hadn't taken his bike, but the streets had been a little icy and he wasn't sure how many books he might end up checking out. As it happened, he had done more of his reading at the library than he expected, and could have managed the books in his bike baskets. He only had another 2 blocks to cover. He'd be home in time for the second song, if not the first. If his little sister Becky had claimed the set for Gilligan's Island, he would have to come up with a way to bribe or threaten her. He could almost see the house from here. Would he be able to expect from the Johnsons' Christmas decorations, which created a glow around their house from Thanksgiving night until the Saturday after New Year's, obstructing his view of everything beyond it on their side of the street. He was about to step off the curb to cross the last street before home when he saw, almost sensed, a blur of movement out of the corner of his eye, something near the back of Mrs. Izzy's house. The guys at school usually called her the creepy old lady because she wore lots of black, sometimes with a shawl over her head like she was in mourning. One rumor was that she'd had a son who was killed in Vietnam, but if so, it happened before she had moved onto Mike Street, and he never had a conversation with her to find out if it was true. Neither had his mom, who wasn't a widow but just divorced from his dad. And he lived in Virginia now, so it was particularly the same thing. Mike turned to see what caught his eye. It was just a guy, not much older than him, a teenager, maybe, dressed like he was coming home from a costume party. He had a military-style coat. The street lamp didn't reach quite far enough, but it looked like the coat was dark blue with gold braids on it. A gold stripe ran down the outside seam of his pants, which were tucked into high boots. On his head was a cowboy-type hat that looked to be the same dark blue. A saber hung from his belt, and he carried a rifle. If it was a costume, it was a heck of a good one. The thing was, he was headed toward Mrs. Izzy's back door, and no one lived with Mrs. Izzy. That much Mike did know about her. The other thing, and this made him let out a little gasp against his will, because so far he didn't think the soldier had seen him, was the guy was there one instant and then he kind of flickered, like when Becky messed with the rabbit ears during one of his programs. Then he was there again, and then he vanished into the shadows behind Mrs. Izzy's house. Should I go to the front door and tell her there's someone in the backyard? He wondered. Should I call the sheriff? Cops never listened to kids, though Mike had been growing his hair out over the summer, and the last time he'd seen Sheriff Tate at the swimming pool, the sheriff told him to get a haircut or wear a bathing cap. He'd laughed when he said that, but Mike couldn't tell if he meant it. He decided to run home and let Mom make the call. He started to sprint, but he was barely across the street when he heard the first scream from Mrs. Izzy's. Mike Taylor didn't know, but what some would come to call the 40-year had already begun again. So, the 40-year, huh? I guess some craziness is happening, and y'all, I like it. I like it a lot. Alright, so now we're going to get into Chapter 1. And this is Cedar Wells, Arizona. December 4th, 2006. And it states, that's a big hole. A big hole, Sam repeated. That's what I said. It's a big freaking hole. And somehow that river got stuck inside. Sam shook his head sadly. His brother leaned casually on a railing, peering into the canyon. Across the way, the lowering sun's rays slid in from the west, dripping gold paint across the horizontal layers of the pale rose, buff, and salmon strata of shale, limestone, and sandstone. Sometimes Sam had to wonder if Dad had destroyed Dean's soul altogether. Nature worked miracles for millions of years to create the Grand Canyon. The Colorado River's the reason it's there. Dean turned slowly, fixing Sam with a steady glare. From the way his mouth curled into a mischievous grin, Sam knew he'd been had. Just because I didn't go to Stanford doesn't mean I'm an idiot, college boy, Dean said. I didn't say. Sam paused, struck. Dean loved to give him crap about having attended Stanford and almost graduating pre-law while Dean carried on the family business. Look, Sam, I know what made the Grand Canyon. I know about erosion. I even get why you wanted to stop here while we were just passing so close. What did I just say? Dude, are you even listening to me? When Dean got in this kind of mood, there was no winning. After his years at college, away from his big brother, Sam had to learn Dean's habits and quirks all over again. These last months riding around the country in Dean's precious Impala, he believed he had reacquainted himself with most of those traits, good and bad. Didn't stop him from stepping right into it from time to time. It is pretty spectacular, Sam said, hoping to change the subject. Another glance at the opposite wall showed that in just minutes shifting light and shadow had altered the view as surely as if the Winchester brothers had moved to a different vantage point. Hints of pine and sage tickled Sam's nose on a whispered breeze from below. The same wind shushed through the branches of the firs and the gnarled junipers surrounding the overlook. I'm glad we made it this side trip. Me too, Dean said. He scratched his head, musing his short brown hair. His leather jacket was zipped against the cold. The snow around his boots was hard-packed, a week old or more. It's kind of cool for a big hole. Am I wrong? More like incomplete, Sam said. You can give me detention. Oh wait, that's right. You aren't the boss of me, so I guess you can just bite me. Dude, I love their aesthetic with each other. It's so awesome. That's not happening, Sam said. Maybe we should just go into town. Even as he said it, he recognized that Dean might take it as giving orders again. That was something he and Dean struggled with. Dean was older, and he strayed on the road with their dad, while Sam turned his back on the family. At least that was Dean's take on it. Sam was that, having announced his intention to go to college, Dad had thrown him out, essentially disowning him. Dad's words, "Don't come back," had seemed plenty specific. But now that Sam had rejoined the family business and the brothers were left to run it themselves since their father's death, there had been friction between the two of them. Dean loved his little brother, and vice versa, but he didn't like being dictated to, and he had made that abundantly clear, which didn't mean it was easy for Sam to Knock it off. He had been on his own for a long time, and he was used to doing things his own way. Dean, having worked with Dad longer, was used to taking orders. More than that, he seemed to thrive on it, as if Dad had crushed the independent spirit he'd been born with. What was left behind was a Dean who Sam bossed around whether he meant it or not. Maybe it wasn't a natural order of things, but sometimes it felt that way to him. Dean shot him a dark glance, but didn't say anything. He pushed off the railing. Let's hit it. When they arrived, one other car had been parked on the gravel symmetrical at the trailhead, but they hadn't seen its occupant anywhere. As they hiked back toward the parking area, not talking, Sam thought he had heard something out of place. He stopped short, put a hand out to halt Dean. Shh. What? Dean whispered. Listen. Not just wind through the pine needles, Sam was certain. Something's crying. Let's get out of here then, Dean said. That's not going to be any of our business. We don't know that. Yes, we do, Dean argued. We came here to go to Cedar Wells and stop people from getting killed. There aren't many things in life I am more positive about. I'm sorry for whoever's crying, but it's not what we're here for. What if it's a kid? Someone who got lost? How long can it take to check it out? Dean rolled his eyes. In that instant, Sam could still see Dean as he'd been at 12, when that had been his response to almost every situation. He hadn't caught up to his older brother in height then. That hadn't come until Sam's 16th year. But he'd been closing in even then. Still, he had looked up to Dean, practically worshipping him, and Dean could cut him deep with one of those eye rolls. Famous last words. Without comment, Dean pointed at the "Please stay on the path" sign, and Sam had stepped over. The crying was full-throated sobs, now as if the person, a woman, Sam thought, no child weeps like that, had stopped trying to hold back and decided to let it all go. It was coming from through the trees, not on the path, and Sam was only following the sound. A couple of minutes later, he stepped around a bushy fir and saw her. She sat on the flat rock in a small clearing, only her tracks showing on the snow-covered floor, her face buried in her hands, and her back and slender shoulders hitching with every sob. Long dark hair cascaded in thick curls past her hands, falling like a heavy smoke. She wore a red parka, jeans, and furry Ugg boots. Behind her, the sun's last rays streaked the far canyon wall. Miss, Sam said, suddenly not all sure this had been a good idea. The woman was an adult. She didn't look like a lost hiker. She just looked sad. Are you okay? For a moment, he wasn't sure she had heard. He was about to suggest to Dean that they turn around and head back to the car. His brother, a couple of paces back, hadn't even broke through to the clearing yet when she lowered her hands slowly and tilted her face toward them. Her eyes were huge and brown, ringed with red. Her strong nose was equally red, and she sat with her lips slightly parted, breathing through her mouth. Her face made a triangle, wide at the eyes, tapering to a chin with a bit of a point. Sorry, she said, and she fished a tissue from the cuff of her left sleeve and used it to blow her nose loudly. Yes, thank you. I didn't realize how loud I was. That's no problem, Dean said, shouldering ahead of Sam. Sam didn't blame him. She looked like she'd be very pretty when she wasn't weeping uncontrollably. We just wanted to make sure that you weren't hurt or lost or something. Sam thought she was debating how much she wanted to tell the two strangers who had just come at her out of the woods. This used to be my husband's favorite spot, she said. Apparently, the Winchester brothers looked trustworthy. She waved a hand toward the view, which had mostly disappeared into darkness. The shadowy bulk of a corner pass, black slipping through the indigo sky, silent as oil through water. He loved it here, and he used to come here to, well, never mind. A slight reddening of her cheeks told Sam all he needed to know about what they did in this secluded spot. Anyway, when Ross died, I scattered his ashes from here. Did you know they want you to pay to do that? Now, come here. Now I come here on his birthday. This is the second one since he passed, and her breath caught as she shook her head, casting her gaze toward the ground. We're sorry for your loss, Dean said. Sam had been worried. You never really knew what might come out of Dean's mouth, and he might as easily have told her that they would be undercover park rangers out to bust people who illegally scattered ashes. Thank you. I'm Dean, his brother went on. No last name, but at least he didn't lie or use an alias, which was rare for him. Maybe the fact that she was a widow had given Dean hope. Not for a relationship. Dean didn't intend to do those, but at least for a flank. This is my brother Sam. Little brother, he added. I'm Juliet, the woman said. She dabbed at her cheeks and nose with the tissue and offered a tentative smile. Juliet Monroe. Pleased to meet you, Juliet, Sam said. We are on our way to Cedar Wells, Dean said. Do you live in the area? Juliet nodded. Not far from here. Not far from there, really. We have a little ranch just outside of town. Or I do, I guess. It was really Ross's dream, but I bought into it too. It's so beautiful around here. I was always a city girl, but Ross convinced me that it was a good move for us. Now I'm trying to sell the place. It's too lonely out there by myself, but I'm not getting a lot of offers. She tried on a sure smile, and it looked like it belonged on her face. Brightening her eyes, swelling her cheeks. You guys wouldn't be in the market, would you? I'll throw in the livestock for free. Us? Dean tossed a private smirk at Sam. No, we're on the road a lot. I didn't really think you were the types, she said. A ranch can really tie you down. I'm sure, Sam said. Anyway, we'd better get back on the road before all the good hotel rooms in the Cedar Wells are taken. Juliet laughed at that. What? Sam said. It's just good hotel rooms in Cedar Wells is a funny concept. Kind of like saying you want to rustle up some good roadkill before dinner. Not the most happening bird, Dean asked. Not even close, unless your idea of happening is Friday night bingo at the church and the occasional loose bull on Main Street. By which you mean a real bull, Sam guessed, and not the kind of loose bull you find around politicians or actors. Or actors who become politicians, Juliet said. But yes, the bull around here is the real kind. So watch where you step when you go looking for those hotel rooms. Is there any place to stay in town? Dean asked. Sure, Juliet replied. It was just your choice of adjectives I was commenting on. There's the bride, the bide, a wee motel. Sounds adorable, Sam said. Some of the roaches there are bigger than my cattle, she said. Or that's what I've heard. Any place else? I'd probably stay at the trail's end if I had to stay somewhere. Trail's end? We'll look for it. You can't miss it, she assured them. You can't miss anything in Cedar Wells unless you blink. It's all on Main, and Main isn't that long. There really is a Main Street? Sam asked. You bet. And Grand Avenue, too. It's paved for 3 blocks, then dirt. And then this place isn't paradise on earth for you. I'm shocked. Like I said, I'm a city girl. I was fine when I had Ross. He loved it all so much. I enjoyed just seeing it through his eyes. But when you have to drive into Flagstaff for a decent half-calf macchiato or a conversation that doesn't begin and end with the weather, she sighed, it gets a little old. I bet, Dean said. Well, we'll get out of your hair, Juliet. Thanks for the warning about the giant cockroaches. Thank you for checking on me, she said. If you're in town, maybe I'll see you at the wagon wheel. The wagon wheel? Sam echoed. You'll see it. She was nice, Sam said, when they reached the Black Impala and were safely out of her hearing range. She was hot. Sure, I guess. Don't tell me you didn't see it. More your type than mine, I guess. She was hot, Dean reiterated. Trust me. So it's good that we investigated. Took a few minutes away from our real business, Dean said, but I'm okay with that. Sam hoped those few minutes hadn't cost anyone's life. They were going to Cedar Wells to look into a periodic killing spree that Marina McBain, a police detective in New York, had told them about. According to the article she gave them, every 40 years the area became the scene of a rash of unexplained deaths. 29 killings the last time. And the town had grown since then. The whole region becoming far more populous as the state of Arizona boomed. According to their best calculations, December 5th would be the beginning of the next 40-year cycle. Today was the 4th. If their calculations had been off, and the time they spent at the Grand Canyon had meant death instead of life for anyone, they wouldn't feel so good about their side trip. Sam and Dean Winchester both followed in their father's footsteps, and their father, since the horrifying death of his wife, their mother had been a hunter. Not of animals or birds. John Winchester hunted monsters, ghosts, demons, the creatures most people only believed in deep down in their 3 a.m. hearts, and that they laughed off when the sun was bright and their spirits high. Even then, in the light of the day, they stalked about. Spirits. They just didn't really understand what they were talking about. Dean shoved the key into the ignition, gave it a crank, and the car's ignition roared to satisfying life. Ticking the vehicle into reverse, he glanced at Sam. It is a big hole, he said. I was right about that. You were right, Dean. The canyon is one big freaking hole. And yeah, so alright guys, well, I think that'll do it for today, but don't worry, I will jump back in tomorrow. It'll be a little bit of a longer session tomorrow. I just wanted to start it, let you guys know what the plan was, and give you guys at least one chapter today. And so far the chapter's been pretty good. You know, I do apologize, I'm not the strongest reader, So when I'm reading it to you, I might, stutter, bubble, whatever, until I get into the flow, because I haven't read a book in a while. So when I get into the flow, it's gonna flow better. But yeah, The Witch's Canyon. So far, it's set up like a episode. You got the prologue where something happens, and then the whole time I was reading that, I just kept thinking about the show. And then when the screams come from the woman's house in the book, I thought of the supernatural title screen. You know what I mean? Because that's what they did in the show. But no, the book seems like it's gonna be good. Like, I love the back when they said about ghosts, dead things, and stuff, killing people. Like this, I have a feeling that this is going to be an awesome book. I think the story is going to be epic. The author, as far as, I know we've only read the prologue in one chapter, but the chapter we read really captured Sam and Dean. Dean is that wise ass, hitting on the ladies, always has something funny to say. Sam's more of the laid back, reserved type. He's not as blunt as Dean is. And they captured that in the book. And it's hard to do that. It's hard to capture characters like that in a book because, as you see them on the screen, you see their mannerisms. You see the camaraderie they have. You see the relationship that the two actors built on the screen. But to capture that in words on a book, the author of this book is very talented. And I have a feeling that this book is gonna kick some ass. I'm not even gonna lie, this book is gonna be amazing. So, but all right, guys. I guess with all that being said, like I said, I wanted to get one chapter down today. Tomorrow will be a little bit of a longer. Look for a couple hour live stream tomorrow when we dive back into this book. I'm gonna go for a little bit tomorrow. It's just we got some stuff to do today, and I wasn't going to put up a live stream today, but I was like, you know what? I wanted to get it started. That way we got a chapter down. That way now it's just flowing, and then we're just going to go through the whole book series. So, all right, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. I love you guys. Thank you guys. Don't forget, if you haven't done so yet, hit the subscribe button. It's free, along with the bell notifications. That way every time your boy Media Fiend throws up one of these live readings or live playthroughs or Call of Duty live streams, you're in the know. And yeah, guys, with all that being said, I love you guys. Thank you guys. And until next time, this is your boy Media Fiend saying, till we meet again, stay chill. And we out. And look forward to tomorrow when we dive right back into Supernatural, Witch's Canyon. I love you guys. Peace.